Welcome to the City. I'm Anthony Wilson, the Public Information Officer for the City of San Angelo. And joining us today is one of our council members, one of our new council members, Councilman Tommy Hiebert, representing District 1. Councilman, thanks for being with us.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Now, you've served on the council in the past. Why did you want to do it again?
That's a good question. I served from 1990 to 96. I gladly stepped aside to let someone else serve. When the situation arose where it gave the indication that there was going to be possibly a wholesale change on the council, I had some friends and associates that said, would you consider doing that again, just possibly to bring some experience, knowledge of process, just to maybe add some stability there that might not otherwise be there. Not that somebody else couldn't do that, but so I considered that and said, yes, I'll do that. So that's the reason I stepped up.
Were there any specific issues or goals that you had that also sort of incentivized you to run?
No, I tell you a couple of the things that I talked about during the campaign, which are still important to me, is our infrastructure, our public safety, our water, economic development. So those things are, I think, big enough, broad enough that we will always need to consider those.
And so as you were campaigning, what did you hear from your now constituents that is, you feel like, helping you in your service as a councilman?
And that's another good question. The thing that I heard the most, really, if you'll be fair, if you'll be reasonable, if you'll do your best to use your common sense, we can't ask much more than that. And that was one of the things that I said during the campaign, which oddly enough is something that I said 20 plus years ago when I ran before. Wanted to be fair and reasonable and use common sense. So I didn't hear any hot button issues that would make you stand back and say, I need to concentrate on those. It was more, do your best, work hard.
When voters did talk to you about issues, what were the things that they typically gravitated toward?
Water. People are concerned about long-term sustainable water supply. People are still concerned about our streets. So those two things popped up more often, and they always want to talk about do what you can to bring in more jobs, to bring in better jobs. But the first two were really what I heard more when I heard something.
And when it comes to water and to streets, did you hear anything that really shaped your opinion, or did it just sort of underscore what you perhaps already believed needed to be done on those fronts?
Underscored what I already believed needed to be. And I know the city has, we've got had a 10-year plan, probably an 8-year plan now for some of the major arterial streets. There's the ongoing effort to secure long-term water supply. So there was nothing specific, but just concentrate on those.
So you've been in office now about 4 months. How is the job different now than when you served in the 1990s?
That was one thing. Another thing I talked about during the campaign, there's that little thing we carry in our pocket that's called a cell phone, a smartphone. Those didn't exist in 1996, much less 1990 when I first went on the council. That has changed the dynamic. People can get you anytime, anywhere. They can say anything they want to. Some of it can be anonymous if they want it to. So, that has been really the biggest change. People are still concerned, for the most part, about the same things that they were 20 plus years ago.
So as you look ahead to your term, what are 3 things that you hope to accomplish during that time?
Again, we talked about it during we have wrapped up our budget discussions, and now we had one vote on the budget, and then we'll have another vote in a couple of weeks. One thing that we need to focus on is we need to help bolster and build our tax base. There's no question about that. We do have, for a property tax rate, it is high, but it is because we don't have the commercial, the industrial, the business tax base from which to draw to keep our residential rates low. So working on the economic development side, to me, is important. It is always going to be important to work on the long-term water supply. We live on the edge of a desert. We don't get enough rainfall. We're probably always right on the verge of our next drought. And then we've got to have a means by which we can transport ourselves, our streets. So we got to focus on those all the time too.
You mentioned about the budget, and as you said, you're sort of in the middle of the process of approving a budget for the fiscal 2018 year, which begins October 1. It holds the line on spending with three exceptions. In it, there are proposals for more firefighters, more police officers, and for pay raises. And I want to talk about each one of those individually. First of all, why do you support the proposal to add firefighters and police officers?
And that's a good question too. What we did for the fire department, which to me is a public safety issue, is approve an additional ambulance that can be available on the front line to go out. We were having to shut down fire engines to make ambulance runs, which is not in the best interest of our public. So I felt strongly that we needed to have that ambulance. Obviously, you have to have the staffing to run that ambulance, so hence the additional firefighters. And it would be virtually the same story for the police officers. There's a crime problem. Some of us don't see that. I'm not sure it is rampant or pervasive, but there is a crime problem. I'm one that believes in, let's look at best practices around from the experts. There are several experts that say you need roughly 1.8 to, maybe 1.9 officers per 1,000 citizens. We weren't very close to that. We're at like 1.6, 1.65. So we are going to start attempting to chip away at that over the next several years, adding police officers. Hopefully we can do that within the constraints and the confines of the budget. So that's the reason I supported those additional police officers.
And when it comes to pay raises, our firefighters are scheduled to receive the largest pay raises in order to help sort of lift them up to what their peers make in some of our benchmark cities. And there's also calls for pay raises for civilian employees and for police officers. Why do you support raising the pay of those city employees?
There is no doubt, in my opinion, the greatest asset to the city of San Angelo is all of its employees. And to attract the best, to attract the brightest, you have to pay competitive wages. I think the environment is, for the most part, pretty good in which to work for the city. The benefit package is good. So there are advantages to being a city employee, but we need to take care of those people. So that's the reason I supported the pay increases for everyone.
You said during some of the meetings that you favor keeping the tax rate, the property tax rate, where it is right now, which is 77.6 cents. What factored into your decision on that?
We were fortunate this year to have the money to address the needs that we believed we had, the council had, and not have to even have a discussion about raising the tax rate. So that was, to me, that was a wise move. We never want to raise taxes. This is something that's, I would say, rather trite and maybe worn, but we all have family budgets within which we must live. So the city needs to do its very best to live within the revenues and the money it has, if you want to call it to live, but to work and to provide services. So that's the reason I supported not moving the tax rate, leaving it at the 77.6 cents.
You mentioned water and streets, and those certainly seem to be cemented as San Angelo's top two priorities for this year and probably for years to come, as you've said. What will you be pushing to happen this coming year in regards to water? Water,
I think we need to continue to work with our Water Advisory Board. We have approved a study for the Water Utilities Department that hopefully will be a very comprehensive look at many options with respect to our water situation. So we work with West Texas Water Partnership. We have got to figure out what is going to be, it's not going to be the answer, but maybe part of the answer to our long-term supply. I candidly don't know what that is today. We know our surface water won't get us there. As our population grows, we're naturally going to use more water because there's more people. So we have got to continue to search for other means by which we can supply water.
Is that one of the reasons that you supported a new engineering feasibility study to sort of marry the infrastructure improvements that we need with whatever the future water supply might be?
Absolutely. The infrastructure, some of it is old. Our water treatment plant is using old technology. At some point, we will have to look at replacing whatever we use now to treat our water with something else, because I'm assuming they're getting close to the point of not being able, with some of the parts that may be needed to secure replacement parts, to keep treating the water. So yes, the reason I supported that is we've got to learn what we need to do. Upgrade the water plant. There are things out at the sewer treatment plant that need to be done. I think it's probably been 20 plus years since something was done out there. So that study should help give us a roadmap which we can follow into the future.
As you know, a lot is going on with city streets. The council a couple of years ago approved a 10-year, $80 million plan to rebuild San Angelo's worst streets. We're in the third year of an 8-year cycle to maintain every city street, and a new asphalt recycler has been deployed to smooth streets that don't really require reconstruction. Is there anything more that you think needs to be done to ensure that San Angelo has better streets?
Something that I have had in the back of my mind. I've had a conversation with the city manager and assistant city managers. Perhaps it's time for us to start considering all our city streets. There are, I'm going to say, in every single member district, streets that need repair that we just do not have the money to repair. And I'm not sure we have the long-term plan to address that. One thing I would like to see us begin, and this would be a long conversation, likely it would outlive this council, maybe the next council, because I'm talking about 20, 25, 30-year look at how do we begin to address every city street that needs something done, because there are many. I know in District 1, my district, I can name 2 or 3 just off the top of my head. I'm sure every council member has 1, 2, 3 streets in their respective single member district that need something that is not on that initial 10-year plan. Those were the major thoroughfares that move the traffic around town. So we've got to consider much longer term, even than 10 years, how we're going to deal with our city streets.
Planning and Development Director John James has briefed the council, this didn't happen all that long ago, on many of the timelines for getting a building permit and an inspection. Those timelines have been shortened dramatically in some cases. Is there more that can and should be done to streamline the development process?
At this point, I think we need to pay attention to that. I have noticed over time that, you know, there are those that have issues seemingly more often than not with the planning department, with the permits department. Some of those concerns, no doubt, are valid. We need to always consider those. But I think for the most part, we need to allow John James, the director of the department, to continue to implement that which he has already started. I have had a couple of meetings with him and some things he is working on. He addresses issues when you bring them to him with specifics and not just vague generalities. So I am supportive of what they are doing now to streamline that process, and what they have done up to this point, which has seemingly provided some fixes that might not have otherwise been there.
So it sounds like you think they may have gotten a little bit of a bad rap.
I think sometimes they do. There's certain departments within the city that seem to catch more of the complaints than others. Planning, permits, inspections seem to be some of those. So, dealing in generalities is one thing. Dealing in specifics is something else. If someone has some specifics, I think the department heads would like those. I think they will address those. So if somebody wants to call me, I'm glad to talk to them, but I'd like to have specifics.
You've been deeply involved in economic development efforts, and you've served for a long time prior to your election on the Coast to DC board. That's the one that oversees the half-cent sales tax for economic development. In your mind, what has San Angelo done right when it comes to luring and creating more jobs?
I'm going to take a little turn from your question and answer. I'll answer that. But one thing they have done right is develop what they call in a acronym BREP, Business Retention and Expansion Program. That is for local businesses. If you look at the Small Business Administration statistics, I'm going to even go on the low end of their statistics, but they say that 50 to 70%, they really say higher than that, but I'm going to go on the low end, 50 to 70% of your new jobs are created in most communities by your existing businesses. So one thing that the Development Corporation has done right, they have developed a specific program, BREP, to help incentivize and grow the local businesses. Then to your question, what have we done right? I think the contract that the Development Corporation has with the Chamber, they have many other partners. If I started listing them, I would leave one out. But they have many other partners with which they work to try to bring in business from outside. That is a longer process, a little more difficult. So I think if we can continue to focus on our local business and growing that, we may then be able to attract some outside businesses that might be a supply chain for some of the local businesses.
And so maybe just two examples of success stories from that BREP program might be Time Clock Plus and Principal LED, just to give the viewers an understanding of how that works and how it benefits local companies.
Absolutely. If people don't know about Time Clock Plus or Principal LED, they are fast growing companies, and they are a real asset to the community. They pay well. They are what I would call clean industry. They don't have any pollution. So it is something that is the reason BREP exists, to help those people do business, but to help them do more business and to grow business.
So what do you think we can do better when it comes to economic development?
One of the things I think we can probably do better is, this is going to sound a little odd, but to be more intentional with our outward marketing efforts. I think we need to work closely with the Chamber to do that. I think we need to have the Development Corporation do possibly more. I know they do a lot, but to do more on their side of the house too, with outreach for marketing. That's how we get those folks here, is to make ourselves known to them outside the community.
When you say intentional, does that mean targeted industries?
It is, and it has to be, because the sales tax can only be used for specific industry segments, they are all identified with a code. So in order to qualify for any kind of help from any development corporation in the state of Texas, they have to fit within these codes called the NAICS codes. If they don't fit within there, they're not eligible for assistance. So yes, targeting industry sectors that have those codes is no doubt a way to try to bolster economic development outside or inside.
We're sitting here in the concourse of San Angelo Regional Airport for two reasons. One is because it is in your district, and also because you've been deeply involved in economic development. The airport plays a role in that. What do you think the airport's role is in economic development?
You know, I anticipated you might ask that question, and just driving in here, I just took what I would say is the long look coming down the road, and look at all the land we have out here. So for the most part, the industry and business that comes to an airport is clean. It is usually higher paying jobs. We have one good example here that I'll say we, this was in my former life, on the Development Corporation, built a hangar, leased it. It is still leased to this day. And so the return on that investment, no doubt, has been good. That's probably something we need to consider doing in the future. That then goes, I mentioned supply chains a minute ago, that then can help us develop other industry for other supply chains that may not be right here at the airport, but they may be in the general vicinity, regionally, but maybe locally.
Your colleague, Mayor Brenda Gunter, has talked about developing this in essence into a business and industrial park as well as an airport. What do you think of that idea?
I think that's a good idea. We no doubt have the industrial park on the far side of town. It has shown real growth in the last 2 to 3 years. We have that same opportunity here. That is something I sit on a task force with the mayor that is something that we are actively discussing, is how can we grow economic development at the airport here.
You've been involved in lots of discussions as both a council member and as a member of the Economic Development Board regarding air service to a second market. What are the prospects of that happening?
If we're going to be blunt, they are not really all that good. We do not have the traffic here to attract another airline right now. So maybe if we can grow through the business side, the industry side, things that happen here at the airport, maybe we can then grow the traffic here, which would then hopefully make us appear on a radar, pun intended, of another airline.
And you've been involved, as I said, very deeply in those discussions. The airport is really bent over backwards in working with other airlines to try to convince them to come here and offering them all sorts of incentives to do so.
They have. There was a grant out there of $500,000 that we could have used and tried, not could have, but tried to use to attract another airline. There was no takers. So I think that goes to long-term sustainability from a profitability standpoint of the airline. So right now we need to focus on, in my opinion, we need to focus on how do we become a better partner with our current airline, the American Eagle system through American Airlines, and help them become more profitable. And can we work with them to increase seat capacity? Can we work with them to increase flights? So, you know, it's an ongoing effort that will never go away. This discussion has taken place over many years. At one time we had 2 airlines. I would assume the reason the one pulled out is because they didn't have the appropriate traffic that they needed to be profitable. So it's going to be an ongoing something to work on.
So it's a matter of passenger loads. So then make the case for why our citizens should fly out of Mathis Field?
I think if somebody would literally take a piece of paper and write down all those things that happen when they drive to Midland, when they drive to Abilene, when they drive to San Antonio, they have an expense for gas. We never factor in wear and tear on our vehicles, but it's there. It's an unseen cost. Then they also, you know, unless we are fortunate enough to be completely retired, some are, no doubt, but our time is worth something. So if you add up just those things there, I think you can make the case almost for yourself that when you enumerate what those costs are on some of those seen and or unseen things with what you'd save in price of a ticket driving anywhere else, I'm gonna guess that it's gonna be pretty doggone close to equally as cost effective to fly right out of this terminal right here where we sit. So again, I know that doesn't probably hit top of mind for a lot of people, but if they would think through, what is my real cost here? I think they would see that it's probably as cost effective to fly out of right here.
And of course, my colleague, Luis Elgazabal, the airport director, would also want us to note that parking is free here in San Angelo, as opposed to those other airports that you mentioned.
Absolutely.
What do you like most about being back on the city council?
I like the process. You know, I like the people. I like you.
I don't get that very often.
Well, you went to A&M. I like process. I hope to be able to think that some of the ideas maybe that we've expressed here might take root. They may not happen while I'm on the council, however long that may be, but something that gains a little traction and grows over time. I think we're all supposed to, as I heard one time somebody say, we should all plant a shade tree under which we will never sit. Maybe I can plant some shade trees under which I will never sit that might benefit someone else.
You mentioned about that little thing you carry in your pocket where people can get in touch with you anytime, day or night. What's the best way for people to reach out to you and contact you if they have something they want to talk to you about?
The city is gracious enough now, this is different now, but the city is gracious enough to provide us a cell phone. So I have a cell phone number, 325-450-8638. They can call me there, they can send me a text. I have an email address with the city. It's my first name, Tommy, Hiebert. Now you gotta be careful how you spell the last name. It's Hiebert at cosatx.us. So they can contact me one of those three ways.
I appreciate you being with us.
I enjoyed it, Anthony. I appreciate you asking.
Me too.
Thanks.
And we hope you'll join us for the next episode of The City.